The man across the table doesn't say congratulations. He closes the folder in front of him, adjusts his glasses, and says the sentence you'll spend the next year of your life trying to understand. Before we begin, there's one rule your grandfather insisted on. He pauses just long enough for you to lean forward. You don't own the money. For a second, you think you've misheard him. Yesterday, you were a 19-year-old university student, worrying about rent, exams, and whether your old car would survive another winter. Today, you're on the 42nd floor of a private office in Zurich, staring across a table, older than your father, at a leather folder embossed with your family crest. Inside it is one number: $400 million. And the first thing the trustee tells you is that you can't touch most of it. His name is Martin Keller, Swiss, mid-60s, quiet in a way that makes you sit up straighter. Your grandfather appointed him almost 15 years ago as the independent trustee of the Hawthorne Family Trust, a structure quietly established in Liechtenstein long before you were old enough to spell the word inheritance. He slides a second document across the table. The trust owns the assets, he says calmly, not you. That sentence changes everything you thought inheriting money meant. You imagined a giant bank account with your name on it, a number that let you do anything. Instead, you inherit a system. The trust owns shares in private companies you've never heard of, commercial real estate in 3 countries, sovereign bonds, index funds, a minority stake in a vineyard in northern Italy, and a percentage of a shipping company in Singapore. The trust owns the house you grew up in. It owns the apartment you'll move into next year. Even the pen you signed the acknowledgement with technically belongs to it. Your job isn't to spend the fortune. Your job is to protect it. Martin explains that every major decision above a certain threshold requires documentation. The family office prepares reports every quarter. Independent auditors review the accounts every year. Investment decisions get made alongside portfolio managers in London and tax specialists in Singapore. You suddenly realize something you never thought about before. The richest families in the world don't manage money like individuals. They manage it like institutions. Your phone vibrates. Jake, football tonight? You stare at the notification. 5 minutes ago, you became wealthier than almost everyone you'll ever meet. Jake still thinks you're deciding whether you can afford pizza afterward. You type, "Yeah, I'll be there." Then lock your phone. Martin notices. Most beneficiaries don't tell anyone, he says. You look up. Why? Because wealth changes conversations before it changes lives. He says it so casually that it almost sounds rehearsed. Maybe it is. He has spent 30 years advising families whose names rarely appear in newspapers, but whose investments quietly shape entire industries. He has watched siblings sue each other. He has watched friendships disappear. He has watched marriages collapse under the weight of numbers neither person understood. He already knows something you don't. Money doesn't create relationships. It reveals them. The meeting continues for another 3 hours. You aren't shown a debit card with an unlimited balance. Instead, you're introduced to people whose jobs you didn't know existed. A private banker from Julius Baer explains liquidity management. A representative from the family office walks you through encrypted reporting software that tracks everything from dividend income to the vineyard's Q3 harvest. An insurance advisor talks quietly about political risk coverage for overseas properties. Nobody asks what sports car you're planning to buy. Nobody even mentions luxury. The conversation revolves around governance. Risk, succession, responsibility. It feels less like inheriting money, and more like accepting a full-time job you never applied for. By the time you leave the building, the city looks exactly the same. Trams still rattle across the streets. People still queue for coffee outside the same cafes. Students still laugh on the corners. Nothing around you has changed. Only your reality has. That evening, you meet your friends exactly as planned. Someone complains about rising rent. Someone else jokes that if they ever became millionaires, they'd disappear to an island and never work again. Everyone laughs, including you. You know that saying I actually inherited $400 million this morning would sound like the setup to a bad joke. So you stay quiet. Nobody notices. Over the following weeks, your life begins changing in ways that don't make sense. Not on the outside. Inside, you still wake up in the same bedroom. You still wear the same trainers. You still eat instant noodles when you're studying late. But every ordinary decision now carries an invisible weight. You find yourself checking the trust's financial dashboard several times a day. Not because you're afraid the money is gone. Because part of your brain refuses to believe it's real. Psychologists have a name for this: sudden wealth syndrome. It's a documented psychological response experienced by lottery winners, professional athletes, entrepreneurs after major exits, and beneficiaries of significant inheritances. The symptoms aren't greed. There's something quieter: disbelief, hypervigilance, isolation. Many people describe feeling like they've stepped into someone else's life and are waiting to be told a mistake was made. You don't tell your friends. You don't tell your professors. You don't even tell your roommate. Because every time you almost do, you hear Martin's first sentence again. You don't own the money. And somehow, that isn't even the hardest part anymore. Keeping the secret turns out to be harder than understanding the money. The trust distributes a monthly amount into your personal account, more than enough to live comfortably, but nowhere near enough to casually spend hundreds of millions. Martin explains that this is intentional. Generational wealth isn't designed to be emptied in one lifetime. It's designed to outlive the person inheriting it. Your grandfather used to say, "We don't create heirs," he tells you during one meeting. "We create stewards." That word stays with you. Steward, not owner. Every month, the family office sends a report that's over 60 pages long. Property valuations, private equity updates, dividend summaries, currency exposure, tax estimates, even a section explaining why one office building in Amsterdam remained vacant for 3 months instead of lowering its rental price. You expected wealth to feel exciting. Instead, it feels organized, almost boring. Then, Martin explains why. The wealthiest families rarely think in years, he says. They think in generations. He shows you something called an investment policy statement. It's not a wish list. It's a rule book. How much risk the family is allowed to take. How much cash should always be available. What percentage can be invested in private companies. What percentage must remain liquid. Even if you wanted to gamble half the fortune on a risky startup tomorrow, you couldn't. The trust wouldn't allow it. At first, that frustrates you. Until Martin asks a question you don't have a good answer to. If your grandfather had given your great-grandfather complete freedom with the family's money, do you think you'd be sitting here today? You don't answer, because you already know the answer. Your friends remain exactly the same. Friday nights still mean takeaway food. The same jokes. The same conversations, the same plans to be rich someday. Only now, you hear everything differently. One evening, Jake says, "If I ever had $10 million, I'd never work another day." Nobody notices that you stop eating for a second, because you've spent the last month meeting people worth hundreds of millions. Most of them work harder than anyone you've ever met, not because they need another dollar. Because preserving wealth requires constant attention. Another family office director tells you something that surprises you even more. The third generation usually loses the fortune. He's referring to a pattern wealth advisors know well. Across many cultures, there's a saying: shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. The first generation builds the wealth. The second protects it. The third often assumes it will last forever. That's one reason family offices invest so heavily in education, governance, and long-term planning. Passing on money isn't enough. Families try to pass on decision-making skills as well. For the first time, you understand why your grandfather left instructions instead of freedom. Months pass. The money changes almost nothing about your lifestyle. You still drive the same aging car. You still wear the same clothes. The only visible difference is that your anxiety about unexpected expenses slowly disappears. You no longer panic when something breaks. You stop checking your bank balance before buying groceries. That quiet sense of security feels more valuable than anything expensive you could purchase. Yet another feeling quietly replaces it. Distance. Not because your friends have changed. Because you have information they don't. One night, your group chat starts discussing investments. Someone recommends a cryptocurrency they saw on social media. Another says saving for retirement is pointless because the future is impossible to predict. You read every message. You type a reply. Delete it. Type another. Delete that too. How do you explain asset allocation, trust governance, and multi-generational investing without revealing why you know any of it? So you send a thumbs up emoji instead. The conversation moves on. You don't. Nearly a year after the inheritance, Martin invites you back to Zurich. You expect another financial review. Instead, he places a single envelope on the table. Inside is a handwritten letter from your grandfather. It had been held back intentionally. The final page contains only 3 lines. If you're reading this, then you've probably realized the money isn't the difficult part. The difficult part is deciding who you become after everyone believes you're exactly the same. Protect the fortune if you can, but protect your character first. You fold the letter carefully. For the first time since the inheritance, the number no longer feels important. $400 million can buy almost anything, except certainty, except trust, except the comfort of knowing whether someone loves you for reasons that have nothing to do with money. You leave the building and walk through the same streets where you arrived a year earlier. People rush to meetings. Students laugh outside cafes. Someone complains about being late for work. Life continues exactly as it always has. No one passing you knows who you are, or what happened to you. And strangely, you hope it stays that way. Because inheriting $400 million didn't change the most valuable thing in your life. It simply made you realize how impossible that thing would be to replace.